Have you ever opened up your fridge and even though there was plenty of ingredients in there, it seemed like there was nothing to actually eat? I haven't been to the grocery store in over 2 weeks, and I am going to show you some of the meals that I'm making using the same ingredients in different ways. This is our Meals and Moments series where I put out a new video every 2 weeks. And it's kind of a diary of my life of things that's happening so you can get to know me a little bit better and the meals that we're making for our family. If you're just meeting me, my name is Amy Cross, and this is The Cross Legacy, where I teach you how to save money on groceries. Our grocery budget is $135 per person, and currently there's only two of us officially living here at the house, my husband and I. So our grocery budget is $270 per month, but we are feeding multiple people throughout the month. This is a meals series that gets posted every 2 weeks. This is Meals and Moments number 4 for 2026. This starts exactly on February 15th and goes through the last 2 weeks of the month. And I haven't went grocery shopping since February 7th. So I love showing that this is a couple weeks after I went to the grocery store. One of the things at the grocery store when I was there, I was debating about getting some English muffins. And then I decided that we just didn't really need them, but I've been thinking about it ever since. So instead of running to the store to get some, I decided to make some English muffins. And it was a really easy process to be able to do. And I love that you bake these or cook them on the stovetop, and they don't have to heat up the oven to make the English muffins. So you can have homemade English muffins anytime, and they're perfect to go into the freezer. We had these just with some butter and with some homemade jam. I normally make our jam in the little half-pint jars, so I don't mind if we're opening a couple different flavors at a time. So we ended up opening up some blackberry jam and also some dandelion jam that everybody that was over could pick and choose what they wanted. Right now is the perfect time in spring if you're starting to get dandelions in your yard. Instead of being depressed that they're out there or frustrated, to go and pick them. As long as you know that you haven't sprayed your yard with any chemicals, you can pick them and make dandelion jelly, which tastes like honey. It is so delicious. Picking dandelions is a special memory I have from childhood, picking them with my cousins for my Aunt Bee and then to make delicious things with them. So that was way back with her Depression era training of knowing what was safe to eat. And it seems like some of those skills get lost for a couple generations and now they're coming back again. I have been thinking about making a video on how to make English muffins. If you're interested in that, just give me a little bit of encouragement in the comments and I will film a video for it. And then we also have the dandelion jam recipe that is on the blog. We will link that in the description. I had a $20 pork loin that I had divided up into pork chops. I actually did this for a video that's already up in the channel so you can see how many meals that one $20 pork loin had made. But I ended up having a family dinner on this night so I could pull out exactly the serving sizes that I needed for the dinner. And we ended up having pork chops with those leftover apples that we had with our cheese fondue on Valentine's Day. I had stored those in a glass jar with a metal lid in the refrigerator and even sliced. They stay fresh for a few days up to a week. So I was able to make that recipe. We have that on the blog if you want to check it out. I make it a couple times a year and I just love it. And then with that, since my broccoli eaters were here, we had a broccoli with this that I put in the oven and also some of that delicata squash that I had purchased way back in September that we're eating now the middle of February. So I had washed that when I brought it home, used it as fall decorations. Then it went into a basket. It was supposed to go to the pantry, but it ended up being in the hallway all winter. And now we're trying to use up the rest of this before we're getting too far into spring. But I love that we were able to pull this dinner together really easily with the ingredients that we had. And I normally have frozen broccoli on hand because Mike just really doesn't like broccoli very much. But I do have instructions here on the channel if you want to learn how to keep fresh broccoli fresh for 3 to 4 weeks. We are just starting to get into spring where we can have really rainy days and then a nice day, and you just never know. day to day what the weather is going to be. And this was a rainy day. We definitely have much less rainy days than we did on the west side when we lived near Seattle, but we still are getting some rainy days. And I ended up pulling out some turkey I had in the freezer. I had bought this, I think, in December because we wanted some more turkey sandwiches. And those were sliced in the freezer in a great portion size for us for dinner. I ended up chopping that up just frozen, and then I added onions and zucchini and celery and carrots. And I ended up cooking some onions and zucchini first in the pan as I was cutting up the celery and the carrots to add to that. And then I was able to add the meat in there and some broth. And then I had some cooked rice that I had added. I have found if I cook it first and let it cool overnight in the refrigerator or even put it in the freezer, I don't have such a big diabetic glucose jump for myself. So that is something that I try to always do, is make sure that we're using kind of leftover rice instead of fresh rice. And I added that to the soup, and we had some chicken stock that I added that was in a super cube, and it melted really quickly into the pan. I did add cottage cheese to this that I put in my blender with a little bit of the broth. And that way I could make it smooth before I added it in, which also added a little bit more protein to it, but it helped with that creaminess that I was trying to achieve into my soup. But by adding the broth in with the cottage cheese, that helped bring it up in temperature, and that way it didn't curdle when I put it in with my soup. There is a term for that. And for the life of me, I can't think of what it is right at this moment. And I don't want to stop and Google it. Okay, this was a super easy dinner. And honestly, one, it was because I forgot about something, but I was having a really hard day. So when I had pulled the pork chops out of the freezer, I realized that I still had a bag of pulled pork in the freezer from September. So I had not used it before the pork chops. We were saving it for a video to show it in the video. And normally I would use up any of the old pork before I started using the new pork. So I was kind of kicking myself that I still had old pork and was using new pork. You know how it goes. And so I decided that we were going to have that for dinner. It was already cooked, so it would warm up really quickly. I put 2 sweet potatoes in the oven to bake, and then I just warmed up the pulled pork with a can of black beans and then put some barbecue sauce on it. And we had stuffed sweet potatoes. It was really delicious, and it only took about 5 minutes worth of effort for me to stand at the stove and do this. And that was kind of exactly what I needed that night. We did end up using the rest of the pulled pork up for lunch. So I ended up cooking the tortillas, warming them up in the pan before I put the meat in the pan. And that way I only dirtied one pan and warmed that up, and then added some cheese to it. So the cheese melted. And then we had those kind of as pulled pork tacos, and it worked for lunch. It was super easy and quick, and it was using up these little bit of ingredients we had left. Mike and one of our kiddos was outside in the backyard all day long. It started out as a nice day, and then as the day progressed, it ended up getting sprinkly and then dark, and they were trying to wrap up this project. But it was a great time for me to just have quiet time in the house all by myself. I am an introvert at heart, and I can get peopled out sometimes, even with my own husband. I was kind of in a baking mood and wanted to make something. And so I ended up making some drop biscuits. And while I was making that, we did have it for dinner and not for breakfast. While I was making that, I also made a sausage gravy. And when I was cooking the sausage gravy, I was cooking it with onions and zucchini added to it. And then I did divide the sausage into 2 portions. So we had enough for the gravy that I was making that night. And then I put the rest of the sausage into the freezer that was already cooked so we can pull it out another night or another day for breakfast. But we already had eggs for breakfast that day, so I didn't bother making eggs with our biscuits and gravy for dinner. I wasn't prepared this year. This was the anniversary of our grandma passing, and last year I was prepared on the first year anniversary of it. But the second year anniversary of it, I didn't think it was going to affect me so much. And it's just amazing how grief is a journey and it can be a roller coaster and you can go up and down. And sometimes the wind just gets knocked out of your sails. And that's why I realized for the last couple of days I was kind of on edge and needing a little bit more quiet time. It was that anniversary coming up on 2/22, and it was her second year anniversary and just missing her so much. I spent so much time with her the last 2 years of her last chapter, and then she moved in with us. So I got to be her total caregiver 24 hours a day for the last year that she was alive. But she was with us for 95 years and had an amazing life. And she's actually Mike's grandma, but I have called her my grandma or our grandma since I was 17 years old. So she was a huge part of our lives. And still every day I think about her. And I love that we've been able to bring things into our home that makes us think about her even more. Mike hung up her dining room mirror above our fireplace. And I just love when we walk into the living room, we can see this memory of her. Or the chair I'm sitting in here at our kitchen table is her table and chair set. So she's just with us all the time. And we just feel incredibly close and lucky to have had such a strong relationship with her. So, Valentine's Day, it kind of normally is a day that we're normally really excited about, but it started all these memories with this, and it kind of led up to this day here because Valentine's Day was like the last day that she was dressed, and she was really excited about our chocolate fondue that we all did together. And we had went to a Valentine's Day market, but we knew that she was declining. She had been on hospice for a few months, and so we weren't surprised when she passed, but it was really hard. But we did make a great ice cream video with her. It was just a few weeks before she passed, and we were able to put that up on the channel. She had lost like 80 pounds within that last year. If you don't know, your sweet and cold sensations are the last ones that go of your taste buds. So all she wanted to do was eat ice cream, and we learned how to make a healthier, high protein ice cream for her that she could eat 3 or 4 times a day. We didn't care as long as she was getting some protein and some nutrients in her body. She loved ice cream so much that whenever I see something of ice cream, it makes me think of her. And so that night we ended up going out for dinner. I'll show you that in a second. But as we went out for dinner, then we went and walked around Marshall's, which was one of her favorite things to do too. I found this little wooden ice cream stacker and it just made me so happy. So I can't wait to see other people get to play with this, but I bought it in memory of her. And so for dinner that night, we went and had fish and chips. That's her favorite thing. And it just was a great time to get out of the house and kind of do a little bit of remembering of her and try to kind of close this grief cycle that we were on so we could wake up the next day and try to make it a better day. All week, I had been working on an embroidery project. This is a new hobby that I started at Christmas time. And I made this cardinal embroidery project for her. She loved cardinals ever since Grandpa passed away, and she had them all around her house. So I made this in remembrance of her, but also it has cherry blossoms on it. And that has always been my sign that I survived the winter and I'm ready to go to the new chapter of spring. So it was just a great thing for me to do in my quiet time and try to not doom scroll on Instagram or TikTok and be able to really focus some good energy into a project. So the next day is a day that I was very busy doing fun things with one of my favorite people in the whole entire world. But we ended up making some pancake bowls that are being really trendy right now on Instagram and TikTok. And let me tell you, they were a total fail. So I will not be posting the recipe. I don't recommend it, even though I had tried to make sure I followed a really good recipe. It just didn't work. And I don't like baked strawberries. So those fresh strawberries that we still have that are 3 weeks old now, I cut some of those up to add them onto the pancake bowl because that's what the recipe said to do. And no, I don't want warm strawberries like that. So anyways, we ended up taking a couple bites of that and then made eggs for breakfast. And I'm just laying out some hints here. So that person might have been really excited about this ice cream wooden stacker that I got, but we don't name names. Josh actually came back into town. He is like a brother to us. I just call him my brother. It's just easier. But we have known him since he was in junior high, and he is like Mike's best friend and just the most helpful person in the world. And he came back into town for a few days starting this day. And I ended up just having to make our meals a little bit bigger. Again, I didn't even know he was coming into town when I went grocery shopping. So it's just kind of a spur of the moment. Hey, I have a few extra days and I'm coming over kind of thing. And we're always so grateful. So while he was here, he put up some shelves in the garage and got lights in the garage, which was just amazing. So now Mike can have some time to go out and do projects and it's not so overwhelming for him to do. And then he did some other projects like fixing the lights in our bedroom. Well, it will be our bedroom someday as we move into that room. There's just a lot of rooms that are kind of in chaos right now as we're trying to remodel one room and then move to another room. And we just know that this is going to be months and months of a process. But hey, it took 22 years for us to remodel our last house before we moved. So I'm not stressing about it. I'm just really happy that we found a house that we love and we're so close to our family. While he was here, he also helped get the built-in drawers fixed that are in our office or our inventory room where we pack all the orders. And so I'm really excited about having these built-in drawers finally working. It was kind of funny when we moved in, we realized there was still stuff in the drawers from the previous owners. And they were like, whenever you can get those open, just throw it away because they haven't even been able to open them in years. So we were able to just throw the stuff away that was in the drawers and we got new tracks on them. And so now there's so much more storage that I can divide all the produce bags up and make it much easier to pack orders. And while Josh was here, Mike ended up coming down with that plague that the rest of the family had that I was talking about in Meals 3. I luckily have not got it, but he definitely has like a chest cold and he has been down for the count now. So probably being out on Sunday in the rain all day long wasn't a good idea after everybody else in the family being sick, but at least I don't have it and he is on the mend. I had some carne asada in the freezer that was from our last meat purchase, which was over a year ago now. And I just pulled that out. I still just pulled out the portion that I would for Mike and I, but we had 3 adults here. And I just added more onions and peppers to this. Now, I'm not worried about Josh's overall nutrition and if he's getting enough calories and if he has enough meat, all of the things. I'm just making sure that the guest in my house is being fed for a meal. I made this carne asada marinade with some fresh orange juice and it made the meat so tender and delicious and it cooked up in just a couple minutes. I just pretty much had to cook it on each side like less than a minute and then I added the veggies into the pan and we had it really quickly. So I'm glad that I marinated it for a few hours beforehand, but dinner itself came together really quickly. And I am trying to use up these corn tortillas. I realized that I have the same package from Costco that I've had since September. So before we go and get any more flour tortillas out of the freezer, I want to make sure that I'm using up all these corn tortillas. So you're kind of seeing them being in meals a little bit more than I normally do. And it's because I'm just trying to cycle those babies out. For dinner on this night, again, Josh is still here, so it's 3 adults. We had beef pot pies for dinner. With that, I ended up cutting the vegetables a little bit bigger because I wanted them more bite size. So when I was sauteing them, I made sure that the carrots and celery were a little bit bigger. And because Josh was here, I ended up adding more potatoes to that than I would have if it was just Mike and I. Just again, just adding more veggies in and stretching those portions. I had sliced roast in the freezer from a meal that I had made in the last couple months, and I was able to just chop that up and add it to the filling for the pot pies. And then I found some beef stock when I was unpacking the pantry, and I was so excited for this because the beef stock is actually like 2 years old at this point. I haven't done any canning in over a year, and I'm finally unpacking those pantry boxes. So those got packed up around January last year. So again, we have things in our pantry, but everything in our house has been purchased over the years with the grocery budget of $135 per person of however many people were living in the house at a time. Over the last 10 years, we've had our own kids living at home, and then we had foster kids living in our home, and then we had grandma living with us, and now it's just Mike and I. So our grocery budget has varied over the last 10 years, but it's always stuck to that $135 per person budget. With the beef pot pie, I did add some tomato paste to that, and all the tomato paste that was left in the jar, I added that into my super cubes and I put that in the freezer so I can just pop them out whenever I'm ready to use them. And then I had frozen pie crust in the freezer that I pulled out for this. I think I bought those in October or November. You can go back and watch my grocery hauls to see exactly when I got them, but I made sure that I got them when they were on sale before the holidays, and I still have some left. And yes, I know my pan is square, but it was deep enough to make sure that it didn't bubble over, especially because I was adding extra vegetables to it. So I have a round pie crust in a square pan. It is fine. We had an absolutely beautiful day. It was almost hitting 60 degrees. I see the sun is shining directly on my face as I'm saying this too. But we had such a beautiful day. I spent probably 6 hours out in the flower beds. All of the tulip bulbs that I had planted way back in October, those are starting to pop up. And I had some peonies and dahlias arrive that was shipped from that original order. So I had purchased it all way back in the fall, and then they send out, when it's time to plant it, they send out the rest of the bulbs. So I ended up being able to work on some of the flower beds that were just overgrown with grass and get bulbs planted in there. So I can't wait for all the colors that are going to happen throughout the entire spring and summer at our house. And speaking of growing seasons and buying things, I had ended up getting some green onions on my last grocery shopping cycle. These are over 4 weeks old today that we're filming this, but these are those green onions that I bought, and they are just growing massively. So I really need to cut them back. I'm going to cut them into little dices and then put them in the freezer. But it really goes to prove that when you follow my tricks and you're buying things in season when they want to grow, that you can just double and triple your money. So again, Josh is still here visiting for this meal, and we ended up making chicken gyros. I have this recipe and the sauce, which I can never pronounce. We'll just put it up right here on the screen for you. But we had gyros for dinner. These are those same pitas that I use throughout the fall and winter to make pizzas. And then as we're going into the spring and summer, I like to make gyros, which is just kind of funny. I ended up mentioning that fact in a video, I think it was last grocery haul, and then I've been thinking about making gyros ever since. It was really easy with the chicken that we already had, peppers, onions, cucumbers that were still fresh. Again, we're pushing into that 4-week mark since we went to the grocery store, and I still have fresh produce that I can pull out and make meals. That recipe is on the blog and it is really delicious, so make sure that you check it out. We will link that in the description if you're looking for it. For this night, I ended up making a goulash for dinner. I call it goulash. I don't know. I just put a bunch of things in the pan until it's delicious. But my grandma used to always make a goulash, and so it makes me think of her. And I ended up cooking a bunch of ground beef to add to the pan with zucchini and onions. The boys think that it smells delicious when they come up and don't even know that I'm adding extra vegetables to their meal. And then I ended up cooking the ground beef. I added some of that frozen tomato paste that I had from a few days earlier. Now, I didn't want to open another jar of beef stock, and I had about 3 cups of beef stock left. from the other meal that I had made with the beef pot pies from a couple days before. And so I ended up cooking the noodles that I had in a pan first. So they were kind of al dente before I ended up putting them into the goulash pan. So that way I didn't have to soak up as much liquid and I could just use up what I had. But normally I would just add elbow macaroni into the pan with enough liquid and then I wouldn't have to dirty two pans. But that's why I did it that way on this night. And I was using up some shells that I had. Those were left over from Thanksgiving. We always make macaroni and cheese for Thanksgiving with shell noodles. And so I just had a few left of those, and it was a great way to use it up in this dish. I ended up dividing this up after dinner and putting it into glass containers into the freezer so I have enough for two more complete meals for Mike and I, and that is perfect. We made dinner, we fed a guest, and then we have two more meals in the freezer, and it was just one night of cooking. So out of the 14 days of this video, I fed more people than just Mike and I 9 of those days. So it really shows how much our groceries that we're bringing in, we're using up and how we're using them in multiple ways and we're able to feed more than just us. Sometimes they're younger, sometimes there's more of us, like sometimes it's the whole family. But Josh was here for 5 full days and then we had others here for just a meal or two. So as you can see that I bring ingredients into my house that I can use multiple ways. And I hope this gives you a little bit of inspiration to be able to mix up some of the meals that you're making for your family and being able to be flexible, to have guests, or if you're just having a bad day and don't want to cook very much, that you can still whip up something really quickly, or you have cooked protein that you've put away in the freezer and it will come back out to make a really easy meal. So all of these tips are things that I've been trying to share in this meal series as you also get to know me a little bit better. But this meal series actually started way back in January 2025 and we did 25 videos in that series. And now we're on video number 4 in the 2026 playlist. If you're new here, make sure that you hit subscribe. We put out 3 videos every single week to help you save money on groceries. There's this meal series, there's tons of produce tips, and there's also like make dinner with me videos and other recipes. All of our produce tips are in our zero waste produce guide, which goes through 75 produce items A to Z. So you can get all the tips to keep produce fresh for weeks. If you don't know, the average family throws away over 40% of the groceries that they buy, and we have zero waste here at our household. I also keep track of all of the meals that I'm making in our meal planner. So this keeps track of all of the grocery shopping trips that I do, the ingredients that I have in my home, and also I keep track of all the meals that I've already made. They're in there. I don't really like to meal plan beforehand. I just like to have the ingredients that I need in my home. And it's a great way to actually track how much your family enjoys a meal if you just take a second to write it down after dinner or one time a week. Just sit down and make some notes about what you actually fed your family that week, and it makes thinking about meals so much easier in the future. Both of these are listed in the description with the discount code, and I just want to thank you for being here. I spend time every single day making sure that I answer all of the questions that I see that come through on YouTube. So I try really hard to make sure that I can answer your questions and help you find links to different things. But it's really important to me that I'm trying to build a community here. So welcome. If you're new here, know that I really try to spend time every single day answering everybody's questions and comments and listening to your stories. It is such an honor to me that I get to take part in this part of your life and help you walk through this journey of having a little bit less stress when it comes to meal planning and feeding your family.